Welcome to this presentation for Spiritual Astrology, AltazarAstrology.com. I'm Altazar. This evening's video is titled Plutocracy, Trump-Epstein Corruption Bromance. So this video is going to complete the series that I have been conducting recently on Jeffrey Epstein and his relationship to the political, economic, cultural circumstances of the United States and its effect on the politics of Donald Trump during this time. This video is going to focus on a completion perspective on the charts of Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein vis-a-vis the chart of the United States and the clear astrological forensic evidence as to what these people represent in relationship to the United States and the people here, and uh, how their astrology is connected to the challenge of the political economic direction of the United States. So let's get into this. I'm Altazar, astrologer with almost 40 years of experience, and of late, I've been offering what I am evolving called forensic astrology. And that is astrology that reveals the truth about the predisposition karma that individuals' astrology charts reveal that implies their potential behavior. And if accused of a crime or corruption or uh, some kind of negativity, can be corroborated in their astrology chart as it's indicated from this deep spiritual karmic astrology, and offer further insight about the truth of who they are and what is going on in current life circumstances. So let's begin this perspective by looking at the chart of the United States as it relates to the planet Pluto. Now, I have done several videos already on the political circumstances at this time associated with Trump and Ghislaine Maxwell and even Jeffrey Epstein in terms of the chart of the United States and the challenge of Pluto, or what we call the Pluto return, which doesn't occur in any one individual's lifetime because you'd have to live over 240 years to have a Pluto return to your birth position. But for a country like the United States, Pluto has returned and to its birth position, which occurred in 1776, July 4th, the birth date of the United States. So let's take a look at that, and then we'll go from there. So now you can see on the screen the chart of the United States in this inner ring here. And in the outer ring is where the planets are today on September 9th of 2025. So for those of you not familiar with at least the basics of what a horoscope is, A horoscope is where we look at where the planets are at any point in time and how they are in angular placement positions around an individual's chart, or in this case, a country. So we're just focusing on the planet Pluto here. So you can see here's Pluto at 27 degrees Capricorn, and that is currently at 1 degree Aquarius. So for the past 7 to 10 years, Pluto had been moving from here to through, well, actually, in the last 10 degrees of Capricorn to a conjunction, or what we call a return to its birth position. So I've talked about, even in my video talking about conservative tyranny, that I presented back in January, that the karma of the United States, and just like individuals, we're not just black and white. We're not bad or good. We're not saints or sinners. We're a mix of energies in a variety of implicit potential expressions in our life. We're complex people, and countries are complex too in terms of our culture, economics, politics, preferences, religions, beliefs, approach to the environment, etc. So the point I've emphasized up through this point is that in the chart of the United States, there is this dual conflicting energy between uh, regressive, conservative, uh, and exploitative approach to economic dominance and the inclination towards uh, democratic freedom and the freedom to offer the socioeconomic political basis to allow as many people as possible the opportunity to pursue uh, a personal and professional and business or economic development to raise their standard of living and ascend to a higher position of self-actualization. So that conflict is associated with the challenge of plutocracy, which existed at the beginning of the founding of the United States and the American Revolution. So again, I'm just repeating a definition of a plutocracy. So a plutocracy in its negative sense, and that's reflected in Saturn in a square to the sun sign in Cancer of the United States, and the Mercury opposite Pluto in the chart of the United States, is where uh, the clever and crafty and ambitious entrepreneurs and wealthy and elite are able to exploit the economy and the population and the working class to extract higher degrees of profit and wealth so that they can ascend and uh, evolve a economic political control over the country's politics and economics and and limit the input or the freedom of those who are not part of their elite ruling class. So this is what existed at the time of the American Revolution with King George of England and his loyalists in the colonies of the what were at the American colonies and the elite of the British. And the American Revolution was no taxation without representation, and the democratization and uh, liberation of our land and resources for the use and development and freedom for uh, self-actualization of our population. Now, a plutocracy in the negative sense is where there over time can be uh, a consolidation of wealth and power to the extent to which there is repression and limitation on the mass majority of the population, uh, and that the elite is referred to as a plutocracy, or in at this current time, the billionaire class, such as Bezos, Zuckerberg, uh, Elon Musk, and a few others who essentially, of a tenth of 1% of the population, control over 40% of our resources. And due to Citizens United ruling by the uh, Supreme Court, which has been largely uh, influenced towards conservatism and this support of consolidation of power, allows for these billionaires to use their excessive wealth to buy elections. And so, who are these people? And why do they need to do this? The elite, the wealthy of other first world countries in Western Europe, such as Denmark, Norway, France, or even England, have a more enlightened wealthy class who realizes that there's a happier and more equitable balance of the culture and the satisfaction of the majority working class population when there is a more equitable distribution of wealth. And so, what we have in this country at this time is not unlike the American Revolution of 1776. It is essentially taxation without representation, like the Boston Tea Party, except you have the billionaire class, people like Elon Musk and others with 300 plus billion dollars, who don't pay their fair share of taxes to equitably compensate American society for the excessive profits they make utilizing the resources of our infrastructure, highways, railways, postal system, the working population, etc. And of course, don't adequately pay uh, wages and benefits that are uh, a lifestyle that is comfortable and easily managed. So we see that Pluto here, opposite yeah, 27 Capricorn, represents this proclivity, opposition to Mercury in the eighth house, of the potential for the evolution of the consolidation and or even monopolization, but at least the oligarchy consolidation of wealth and power in this country to the detriment of democratization and equitable distribution of wealth to the working class and major population. So, with that said, um, I am now going to bring up the chart of Epstein and Trump vis-a-vis the chart of the United States, just so you can see how that their charts at this time play into the challenge that the American people have in regards to the same challenge they had in 1776. And that is to reclaim and democratize the resources of our country from an oligarchy and a plutocracy. So now you will see the chart of the United States as I've shown it before, under its current horoscope or the Pluto return, and the chart of Donald Trump as it is uh, distributed around the chart of the United States, and that of Jeffrey Epstein as it's distributed around the United States. So to show, as I have done in previous videos, the connection of these two individuals to the political economic situation of the United States at this time, at the time that we're focusing on now, the Pluto return, the challenge of plutocracy. So remember, I showed the chart of the United States with Pluto was over here, and Pluto being at natally 27 degrees Capricorn in the chart of the United States. So when we look at any relationship, even between two people, we're looking at, well, how are some of their planetary placements in an angle or an effect in the chart of the other individual? Well, now we see it in this country. So we see that, and I had shown Jeffrey Epstein's in the previous video, but here's Donald Trump, which I've shown in the previous video as well, uh, that you see Saturn, Venus here at 23 to 25 degrees Cancer, straddling the Mercury at 24 degrees Cancer of the chart of the United States in the house, which this little wedge here is called a house, and that house is the house associated with shared financial resources, resources associated with taxes, resources associated with banks and the financial system, and stocks and gold and all the fundamentals that support the economy and resources of the population. And so we see here that, as I've talked about, Trump's Venus-Saturn conjunction in his natal chart implies that he is someone who is a transactional person. He's someone whose sense of self-worth and dynamic with people is directly tied to the Saturnian need for status and power and uh, continuous ambition for material gain as a reflection of self-worth. And so Trump, his natal chart shows distinctly that he is, uh, in terms of an effect in the United States, a leading advocate and uh, exploitative power for the plutocracy. Now, and so he is distinctly an advocate and an activist for cons continuous belief system in the freedom and the so-called egoic or divine right of the wealthy elite to control the power and then economic political decisions associated with the country and its resources. And now, when we look at the chart of Jeffrey Epstein in terms of his relationship to Pluto, we see that uh, his Saturn, remember, Saturn is associated with burden, restriction, political ambition, ruthlessness, and inclination for exploitation and control. And Jeffrey Epstein has Saturn in in his natal chart in a square to Mercury in Capricorn. And that's opposite the Mercury of the United States. It's opposite the Saturn of Donald Trump. In fact, uh, it shows they could potentially be both highly attracted to each other in terms of their exploitative orientation to life in the world and the economic resources of the country, or be also a nemesis and a competitive uh, thorn for each other. Now, so we see here that the Mercury sun sign of Jeffrey Epstein, which is squaring his Saturn, shows, as I've shared in the previous video, he is a ruthlessly ambitious person to ascend to higher and higher positions of control, dominance, power, and wealth. And note his Saturn at 27 degrees Libra exactly square the Pluto of the United States. So here we see Trump, his Saturn, and Venus, his inclination for the need for narcissistic power and self-worth, uh, opposite the Pluto of the United States, and Jeffrey Epstein's in a square. These are adverse angles showing that each of these individuals have an adverse uh, energetic connection to the well-being of the economic, political resources of the United States and are essentially, uh, if you will, surrogates and representatives of plutocracy, since they adversely aspect Pluto. So here we are seeing the forensic evidence of the astrology that demonstrates that both Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein are two individuals who represent uh, the most challenging and or corrupt or adverse uh, influence and effect on the transformational evolution of the United States as a Pluto return implies. So now I'm going to bring up the natal charts of Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump to demonstrate the the bromance or how these two men are have similar karmic predispositions that lend towards corruption and narcissistic distortion and effect in the world. So now you're seeing on the left the natal chart for Jeffrey Epstein, and on the right, the natal chart of Donald Trump. So the natal chart is most accurate for Trump because we got this from a source that claimed to have his accurate birth time as 10:54 a.m. in Queens, New York. For Jeffrey Epstein, we have his location of birth, but we don't have necessarily his accurate time, but it's a good enough estimate, uh, having 12 noon the midpoint of the day for the majority of the most important karmic positions. Now, I've talked about both of their charts in previous videos in terms of their karma and their predispositions that lend towards a certain degree of negativity. Well, let me just repeat here to show the parallel. Now, what is more apparently a positive for Donald Trump is that in his natal chart, he has Jupiter in a trine to the planet Uranus and the Sun, which gives him a more favorable birth in this life, a birth into potentially a wealthy or uh, more upper class family in society, which would offer him the resources for cultivating confidence in his self-expression. Or, as a Jupiterian can imply, an overconfidence and a sense of elite authority. Whereas in the chart of Jeffrey Epstein, um, we see here that he was not necessarily born into an easy or upper class situation. In fact, the Saturn is contradictory to the Jupiter that Donald Trump has. In terms of Donald Trump's Jupiter to his sun sign implies that his father would offer him a lot of potential opportunity for growth and resources for expanding his life opportunities. Whereas Jeffrey Epstein, in fact, would experience a deprivation from his father, a lack of support or role modeling. Uh, that's what a Saturn square to the sun sign implies. In fact, it implies a father wound, which is deeply a sense of hidden or resentment towards one's father, or contempt for having a father who was inadequate, a poor role model, or didn't provide direction for the evolution of his identity and resources. So people with this kind of circumstance, especially Saturn square the sun, often we call that the Napoleon complex, or even the Hitlerian complex, of those who come from these somewhat deprived backgrounds who are driven almost ruthlessly and unscrupulously to uh, advance and work hard at attaining higher and higher levels of socioeconomic status in society to prove their worth and uh, gain dominance and control. Now, the contradiction between these two is that Jeffrey Epstein, with a Venus-Mars conjunction in Pisces, uh, implies that in trining Uranus, that he's a much more adept and tactful, if not deceptively manipulative, romantic. And that's what, but yet the Uranian aspect to Venus and Mars implies someone who has an insatiable uh, appetite and quest for endless, numerous romantic encounters and or sexual encounters, that making him a sex addict predator. On the other hand, Donald Trump, a Venus-Saturn conjunction, implies almost as ruthless or as ambitious an orientation to find women that demonstrate beauty that can adorn or enhance his own narcissistic sense of position and power. So that's where he is continually looking for relationships and connections of what we call the trophy wife or the trophy girlfriend or the trophy involvements with beautiful women, such as owning the universe, Miss Universe pageants, etc. Now, where they collide is, well, and where they are uh, similar in their uh, misguided karmic behavior is their mutual Mercury square Neptune in the chart of Donald Trump and in the chart of Jeffrey Epstein, Mercury in Capricorn square not only Neptune but and Saturn. So as I've talked about in previous videos, the two of them are highly insightfully perceptive, yet manipulative, pathological liars. Or, if you will, if we look at the chart of these individuals, if I just saw them when they were first born, I could say that the fundamental challenge that Donald Trump will have, aside from the narcissism he has in terms of social relationships, enhancing his sense of self-worth and identity, will be his ability to perceive and accurately communicate the truth and approach that truth ethically, morally, and in reality versus uh, being someone who could be a pathological liar, who is willing to say or do anything to deceive or to enhance his position, to advance his own selfish goals that enhance his own stature and well-being. And that applies for Jeffrey Epstein as well, except Jeffrey Epstein, with the square to Saturn, would be someone who is much more uh, calculating and detail oriented in his ability to present his positions and his communications in a business and social context, which would lend towards his adept garnering of financial resources in terms of manipulating the money and the fund management he was able to attain with billionaires and wealthy corporations. But fundamentally, the two of them are each uh, with the predisposition and proclivity for deception, manipulation, lies, and a pathology for saying whatever will further their goal and effect in the world. So now we're going to further uh, enhance our perspective on the bromance of corruption that both Trump and Epstein represent. They were closest of friends from the late either 1980s, early 90s, all the way to the beginning of the early 2000s. And this has been demonstrated through pictures and videos that have been presented in the news media. I'm going to now post the chart of the overlay of Trump and Epstein's charts to show how they have not only the similar corrupt behavior I've already described, but how, in fact, uh, due to their self-absorbed ignorance, actually are a nemesis for each other. Before I complete this presentation, I'd like to ask you to like this video if you found this interesting and informative, and please do subscribe and click the subscribe button below if you would like to be notified about future videos and presentations I'll be making on various political and notorious individuals, as well as interesting topics for personal and spiritual growth. Here is my contact information. And so you are welcome to email me or visit my website at altazarastrology.com. And if you are interested in a free introductory astrology reading, please do contact me at the email address here indicated, altazarastrology@gmail.com. In someone's house of marriage and long-term partnership, it shows the potential for a very deep and passionate connection. It also shows the potential for a very turbulent a love-hate relationship. Now, what further determines that? We see here that Jeffrey Epstein's sun sign is in the house, the fifth house of romance, bromance, in the chart of Donald Trump. So this does show that there's a certain attraction and affinity between the two of them in terms of lifestyle and sense of connection for mutual activity related to women and romantic dynamics. Now, we've seen the recent revelation by the Wall Street Journal and other publications of the letter that Donald Trump sent to Jeffrey Epstein on his 50th birthday. And so I'm not sure if you can see that letter here. Let me see if we can bring that up here. There it is. So what is allegedly written by Donald Trump to Jeffrey Epstein is a kind of dialogue in which Jeffrey Epstein saying there must be more to life than having everything, being two wealthy elite men. Donald says, yes, there is, but I won't tell you what it is. Jeffrey, nor will I, since I also know what it is. Donald, we have certain things in common, Jeffrey. Jeffrey, yes, we do, come to think of it. Donald, enigmas never age. Have you noticed that? As a matter of fact, Jeffrey replies, it was clear to me the last time I saw you. Donald says, a pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday. May every day be another wonderful secret. Donald J. Trump. Now, this dialogue is written in the context of a woman's figure, a woman's body, just simply the figure, and a couple of curves indicating breasts, and at the bottom signed Donald, where you would assume in that figure of the woman is her pubic hair. So allegedly, uh, Jeffrey Epstein either introduced or was associated with the social life and partying dynamics that evolved Melania making a connection and evolving a romance with Donald Trump. So now you are seeing the charts again of Donald Trump and overlaid by Jeffrey Epstein. And I showed the position of Epstein's Sun and Mercury in Donald Trump's house of romance and in his Venus, Mars in the house of partnerships and or uh, marriage if they were uh, of the not necessarily the opposite sex, but certainly that potential. But what we are also seeing, as you may recall, that Jeffrey Epstein's Saturn position, which I indicated at 27 degrees Libra adverse to the 27-degree position of Pluto here in the chart of the United States, uh, is in adverse angle to the Venus Saturn of the chart of Donald Trump. And this shows that when it finally comes down to uh, financial dynamics or political economic dynamics, Jeffrey Epstein is an adverse enemy and or problematic disruptor of the political, financial, economic circumstances of Donald Trump. And let me just say this, that Donald Trump's uh, history also does include uh, a different form of sexual and cultural negativity. And he was accused of sexual attack or uh, abuse of E. Jean Carroll and didn't necessarily win a lawsuit. She didn't win a criminal lawsuit against him, but she did win a civil defamation case against Donald Trump, in which Trump was found guilty and charged with a fine of $83 million because of the way he denies her 2019 accusations of sexual assault. Also, other evidence of Donald Trump's arrogance towards women and or inclination for power and sexual abuse was revealed by an Access Hollywood tape in 2005 in which he makes vulgar and explicit comments about women, one of which implied that he said uh, he would be enjoy grabbing their pussy. So when we come now to this position of current circumstances, the challenge of plutocracy, uh, we see that it's no coincidence that Jeffrey Epstein has emerged as a thorn in Donald Trump's political side, uh, as Donald Trump was a thorn in Jeffrey Epstein's side back in the early 2000s when he denied Epstein the purchase of a property in the Palm Beach area in Florida uh, that Epstein wanted to acquire, and Donald Trump outbid him. And so that's so now you might say that Jeffrey Epstein is posthumously uh, adversely emerging as a in retribution and challenge uh, to Donald Trump and his character and stature, especially with his MAGA base and his so-called religious right evangelicals, who now are more and more getting in their face the hypocrisy of their support for a man who has been convicted of 34 uh, fraud felony convictions in the state of New York for economic fraud, and also increasing evidence of his, if you will, sinful violation and arrogance towards women and his abusive sexual innuendos and behavior. So we can see how back in the day, Donald Trump viewed Jeffrey Epstein with this Venus Mars in his chart in adverse aspect to Uranus, implying Jeffrey Epstein enhancing the Playboy dynamic of Trump's behavior during the 1990s and his all his connections with women through his ownership of the Miss Universe pageant, as well as all his flirtations with the most attractive models in the world in New York City, as further elevated by the connections and uh, social events of Jeffrey Epstein to the eventual sobering reality of the immorality and negativity of the evolving, arrogant plutocracy that Jeffrey Epstein had been a part of, and Trump continues to attempt to be the leader and consolidator of, which is being undermined by the revelations associated with Jeffrey Epstein. So this concludes this presentation. Again, if you felt this was informative, please like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you in the next presentation.